Joining us now, Democratic Congressman from Connecticut and ranking member of House Intel, Jim Himes. Really good to have you. Can I get your reaction first to the news that Rick Crawford will be your cohort on the other side of things? Will be the chairman of House Intel.
Yeah, I know Rick, and I've worked with him for a long time. I respect him, and I'm looking forward to working with him. But I think what was done to Mike Turner was just terrible and a little scary, right? Katie, you'll remember from Trump's first term, there were three institutions that he attacked and badly wanted to compromise and eliminate their independence: the Federal Reserve, the Department of Justice, and the intelligence community. And it's essential that all three of those departments and institutions maintain the independence that allows them to do what they need to do. And whether it was inside the House Republican Conference, as the Speaker maintains, or whether this was a Mar-a-Lago thing, as Mike Turner believes, he got fired because they thought he would do his job of providing oversight of the intelligence community to make sure that the intelligence community, no matter what Donald Trump wanted to hear, that the intelligence community was delivering its best judgments and assessments to the president. So this is again, nothing against Rick Crawford, who I do like, but this is just not a good portent for, what was designed to be an institution that was a check and a balance on the power of the president.
So just to remind folks where Mike Turner stood, he's a Republican, aligned with a lot of Trump stuff, aligned with Republicans on pretty much everything. But he was critical of Donald Trump for that phone call he made to Zelensky, the thing that got him impeached the first time. He also was supportive of the U.S. sending arms to Ukraine, really wanted to keep that going, not a fan of Russia. Donald Trump obviously not aligned with him on that. And then he voted to certify President Biden's election. As you understand it, were those the things that ultimately made his chairmanship untenable or undesirable for Mar-a-Lago?
Yeah, I think you framed it exactly right, which is that, Mike was by and large a supporter of President Trump, but he maintained some independence. And you just sort of talked about why. And Mike Turner also knew that his job was to, even when the president was of his party, was to provide tough oversight of the activities of the executive branch. And, this isn't that Mike Turner was a 30% Trump guy. He was a 90% Trump guy. But 90% is not good enough, particularly in a very sensitive position, like somebody who is there to provide a check and a balance on the activities of the intelligence community.
This is the Gang of Eight. You're going to get access to the most sensitive classified information that the United States has access to. As I understand it, Mike Turner is no longer even on the Intel Committee. You've seen all this in intelligence, Congressman. I know you can't go into it, but you talked about this sending a chill down your spine. Is it because of what you know that's out there? That is there a threat that you're worried about that you think Donald Trump doesn't see as a threat? What is the chill?
No, it's not so much that. The chill is, I had this weird feeling that it was like, I remember exactly where I was when the president fired in the beginning of his first term, Jim Comey, the FBI director. Now, whatever you think about Jim Comey, and lots of people think lots of different things about Jim Comey, there was that moment in the White House where the president said to Jim Comey, "I need your loyalty." And Jim Comey said, "Well, I'll be loyal to the law." No, I need your loyalty. And that's what just happened, right? I don't think the conversation actually happened, but I think people wondered whether Mike Turner, when push came to shove, whether he would stand for the Constitution and his job as a member of Congress, or whether he would defend Donald Trump. And I think that is why he is gone. No, there's not a particular threat out there, by the way, but I will tell you, setting aside sort of the constitutional issues and the good governance issues, Mike Turner has probably forgotten more about the national security of the United States than any 12 members of Congress are ever going to know. So yes, of course, it's a huge loss at a very senior position in a very sensitive role. But it's more about the signal that is sent in this building. If you're only 95% loyal to Donald Trump, you're out of there. That people will watch and learn.